what inspirations growing up led you to your love of writing, and what was your favorite book to read as a child?
See, she has read all my books. She's really, really into this stuff. She knows. And
yeah, it had nothing to do with me typing it 2 days
nothing
ago.
Whatsoever.
Nothing whatsoever, no.
What books did I read as a kid? The first books that I read were little classics, H.G. Wells' Time Machine and The War of the Worlds, and I just really got into those. And when you're a kid, that's all-consuming, and you absorb those. There were, when I was in 7th grade, it was this little dinky school that I went to that had a library that had all the C.S. Lewis Narnia books in it. Mm-hmm. And all the kids, it was a Christian school, so they had approved books.
Oh, yeah.
And nobody wanted to read anything other than Narnia books because those were the only interesting approved books.
Yeah, exactly.
And the problem was they were always being checked out. They had one set in the library, and everybody's reading them. They were always being checked out. So whenever you saw a Narnia book on the shelf, you just grabbed it.
Right.
So I read them in utterly the wrong order. Everything totally wrong. But it's just whatever you saw, you got it and you read it, and even though you didn't understand, and the one that I read first was The Horse and His Boy, which is not connected to the rest of the books. And I read it and I thought, okay, this isn't as great as all these people are raving about. And then the next one that I read was The Last Battle, which is the grand finale and everybody gets killed and all this stuff, and I just went, okay, that was pretty good too. And then finally I started reading, and then my schizophrenic brain had to reassemble all these stories in the proper order. And then I read The Hobbit when I was in 9th grade, which just blew my mind. Yeah. But the funny thing was I was in this little tiny town in Wisconsin, 250 people, really isolated. I was the token nerd in the entire town, so everybody teased me, and they didn't read comics, they didn't read science fiction. And I remember reading The Hobbit, and it just blew my mind, and I needed to talk to somebody about this because it's the greatest book ever.
Where was the internet then?
And I remember being on the school bus, school bus full of mundane kids, and I was the nerdy kid, and I'm like, has anybody read The Hobbit? I want to talk to them. And they all looked at me like I had just crawled out from under something. And so I had lots of time to read because guys like that never got girlfriends. So
no, I definitely want to say thank you to you for basically all of the Star Wars literature you put out, because reading that is what kept me from not getting in trouble as much during high school, because I was at least too busy buried in the book to pay attention to how annoying everybody else was around me. So it kept me from getting into what possibly could have been a lot more trouble.
Glad to have corrupted your youth. Good.
You saved several other people's, so that in a way, you are a lifesaver.
You've written in the Star Wars universe have darker themes than in the movies themselves. Is this a problem that's just a books versus movies thing, or was there a push to raise the stakes higher than they had already been set in the original trilogy?
So you're complaining I didn't put Jar Jar in the books or something?
Oh God, no,
that?
we're not complaining about.
Okay,
we don't.
Good.
No.
We weren't looking for Scrappy Doo to show up in Star Wars. Thank you.
Well, it's when you're writing the books, you get into the characters' heads a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And in the original Jedi Academy trilogy, one of the main characters is Kip Duran, sort of this young, cocky kid, like baby Han Solo, and he has Jedi powers, so he gets trained, and of course, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, that kind of thing. Yeah. So but by doing that, he sort of starts down the slippery, dark slope, and he degenerates to the dark side. And following that, the character arc from really a squeaky, clean Charles Dickens likable kid who's the ragamuffin orphan stuck on the spice mines of Kessel, and raising him up to being a powerful Jedi that then turns to the dark side and then the giant downfall. That kind of character arc is really interesting. And if you do just, hi, I'm the hero and I'm going to stay the hero all day long every day for the rest of the trilogy, it's not all that interesting.
True. That brings up another question. How do you feel when, because Kip's been in several more novels throughout the
I wish he hadn't
series.
risen and fallen like a bunch of dinner rolls that my wife is the...
It's like he redeemed himself.
To me
it
was
takes a while, but
if he did redeem himself, then you kind of want that to stick rather than And then he went bad again. Then he
More
got
importantly, how do you feel about like his hair and facial hairstyles that he's been getting throughout the series?
Well, that I have nothing to do with. So it's the facial hairstyles can be fixed, but
Right.
But I do want to emphasize that even though I created the character in the Jedi Academy books, that I was the hired gun, just like Tim Zahn was and Mike Stackpole and everybody else. That we were hired by Lucasfilm to play with their toys,
Right.
But we have to return the toys at the end of the day, and somebody
you
else
still
can
got to
play
play
with the
with
toys.
the
I got to
toys,
play with
yeah.
the toys. So it's not like my character that somebody else is doing. That sure, I created the character, and in the
Right.
comics that I did with Christian Gossett, we created the double lightsaber that you see later with Darth Maul using.
Right.
But it's not mine. I was hired. I mean, that's like when the guy at Starbucks who makes you your latte, it's not his latte. He's making it for Starbucks,
Right.
and you're buying it. And not that I'm comparing Starbucks coffee and Star Wars books. It's not. Fans, don't do
would
that.
be-
Don't
would-
do that.
Like you think the fan outpouring about the expanded universe is bad now?
Yeah,
Wow.
let's that we don't.
Look what just happened.
But the point being that I was hired as a work for hire for Lucasfilm, and they own everything, and they get to do whatever they want with it, and there's no sour grapes of me sitting there. And the same goes for the expanded universe. The uproar
answered that
itself.
question.
The uproar itself is a little baffling to me because I mean I read a bunch of Star Trek books too. It's like when J.J. Abrams made a new Star Trek movie, you weren't expecting that all of the 300 Star Trek books that had been published before, that somehow those were all going to be part of the canon to go into the movie. They're still great books. Well, I hope you think they're great books. I mean, we wrote them, and they're great stories, and you can still read them. That, for heaven's sakes, if you've read any kind of comics, how many different variations of Superman and Batman and all the main characters are? How many times have they died and come back again and all this?
Right.
So that's part of the game when you're writing with established characters, that there are often multiple universes, multiple storylines, and the cool thing is that I get to go see Star Wars Episode 7 and not have a clue what's in it, so I
Right.
can be entertained.
I think the other part of that question is, what would you say to the fans who are kind of downtrodden or a bit upset about the expanded universe not being considered canon anymore? What words of encouragement would you send to them, or just calm down? Yeah.
Keep calm and keep reading.
Keep calm and keep reading. Yes. Okay. Done right
Well,
there.
I mean, I find it touching and gratifying that they're like my Crusaders and Tim's Crusaders, that we're all like defending the books that we wrote, and I'm glad that, and it's really been 20 years now.
Right. No,
93 is when my Jedi 93, 94 is when my Jedi Search came out, and the fact that it made such an impact and is so important to people that they want to still go out and defend it and everything, I love that. That's great, but don't have a civil war in the Star Wars universe. There's enough civil wars of the Star Wars universe on
Already,
screen. So you can keep reading my books. You can read some of my other books if you want. You can go see other Star Wars books.
I think the big civil
Why
war
can't we all
occurred when
just
they
give
killed
along?
off Chewbacca in the books, and then everybody was like, "I will never read the new Jedi Order," and I'm like, "Come on!" At some point in time, they had to raise the stakes.
I mean, and do you really want to have a bunch of 98-year-old characters sitting around in the Alderaan retirement home and just...
Well,
you don't want that. You want,
first and
for
foremost,
heaven's sakes, you blow.
They rebuilt Alderaan.
Yeah.
How did they pull that one off? The reverse Death Star.
No, well, it's called the New Alderaan retirement home.
It's called Lifestyle.
Yes,
Life Star.
yes, it's life.
Unicron.
So the Star Wars Holiday Special isn't canon either. I know that wrecks everybody up that they can't consider that canon.
Yeah, because I think that was supposed to be like the first appearance of Boba Fett or something.
Oh, he's in there. There's like an animated short where a bounty hunter is in there. And
I know. We
I
had
know.
one more.
I've watched it.
We didn't. No.
But I
Covered it?
wonder,
I'm screwing up your interview by just riffing off all kinds of
No,
questions.
you're making it fun.
Yes.
That's what makes it fun.
because you have your own books that you write that aren't, connected to any established
Particular
things,
brand,
right?
yeah.
Right.
Do you have more fun writing your own and like developing your own characters, or like with the characters that are already established and sort of fleshing them out more than the movies? Or
Well, I mean, I'm born and bred a fanboy. I mean, I'm a fan. I used to make up Star Trek episodes when I was playing on the playground at school and all this stuff, and I used to read comics. And to be able to play in these universes that I'm a fan of, that geeks me out. I love doing that. But I'm also a writer, so I like being able to make my own novels and my own universes, my own characters. But I get to do both. It's not like I choose one or the other. I write fast enough that I can do some tie-in books. I can write in the Dune universe. I can write in the X-Files universe, the Star Trek universe, the Star Wars universe, the Batman and Superman. So I can do all that stuff. That's the fanboy Kevin writing stuff. And I can write my own Dan Shamble zombie PI stuff, or my Saga of Seven Sons, or Clockwork Angels. Of course, that one's based on an album by Rush, so I'm working with them on that. I just like writing and telling stories. And when you think about it, any novel that any writer writes, it's in an established universe. If I write something set in Atlanta, I have to write it with Atlanta. There are rules. There are the way the weather is and the buildings and all this stuff. So you have to figure out how to set your story in this existing universe, which just happens to be our real one. And there are times when it's hard if you really have to make up everything. I mean, the environment, the magic system. So you go, well, I'll just set it in Portland, Oregon. Well, Portland, Oregon, people can go there and see it. So you got to get the details right. So you got to do your research. You have to know what it's like. I mean, just by having a street map isn't quite enough. Because New Orleans is actually different from Seattle. I mean, they're different things, and a good writer will pick up not just the street names, but the sense of the environment and the feel of it.
What other advice would you like to give to any new and aspiring authors out there?
I like to compare being a successful author as being a pro athlete. You don't just say, I think I want to be a professional baseball player, so I'm going to throw a pitch for a couple of times, and that's all I need to do, right?
Right.
I mean, most professional sports players have been professionals, have been working at it since Little League before that, and they play and they practice and they constantly work on it. If you want to make the Olympic team as an ice skater, you don't just go, well, I've never ice skated, let me put some ice skates on and I should make the Olympic team. If you want to be a best-selling writer, you have to work at it and get better and keep practicing, and you still might not make the team. But, you don't want to get into – I don't want people to have the mindset of, well, gee, all you're doing is telling a story, so why isn't somebody just immediately buying it and selling millions of copies? You're rolling your eyes, but I meet a lot of aspiring writers who are like that. They just think, well, it's not hard. I can just write a book.
I'm rolling my eyes at them, not
Yeah.
you.
Many books. Do you get
Many books.
Many books? I think I read 100.
And you've read them all, thank
I
you.
have read them all. All 125.
Yes.
They're sitting in my house. Yeah.
I loaned them to her.
Do you get writer's block?
I don't have time for writer's block. That's why I don't get writer's block. I've got like 5 or 6 things going at any one time, and if I kind of get stuck on one project, then I just switch to a different one that I'm not stuck on, and I keep writing there. And usually it just takes a little while for the one I'm stuck on to get digested and go, oh, that's how I can figure it out. Mm-hmm. So if I were only writing one book a year and that's the only thing I was doing on, if you get to like a tough spot where you need to do more research or something's not working, you're screwed. I mean, you can't do anything else until you solve that problem.
That was
Thank you.
basically
That's
what
very
I was
helpful
saying.
for
Yes.
us.
Basically
Yeah.
what I was getting at is for people with writers.
Well, I have, if you can be schizophrenic enough to work on, Mulder and Scully in one book and Luke and Leia in another book and my own zombie detective in another book, but they're all my kids in my head. I mean, I don't
I'm
I don't mind
Scotch-Irish.
it.
I'm not
Yeah.
writing ahead.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, we got time? All right, cool. Want to goof around for a minute?
I thought we'd been goofing around. Okay.
Well, you want to be
Sure.
even goofier. So
Star Wars, the Empire's best coffee.
Well, and I've seen the little green circle with Starbucks, only it's got like the imperial symbol in the middle of it, and
Yes.
the emperor.
that's the best.
Awesome.
Yes, the bold roast is the dark side.
The bold roast is the dark side. I like that. I think
I want to go to Toshi Station and pick up some caramel macchiatos.
These are not the beans.
looking for. I like how this whole thing just suddenly became coffee.
Yeah, see?
May the blend be with you.
Darth Vader, inhaling, going.
Way. That's cool.
No, that I think we just explained how it is that they came up with Mr. Coffee and with the whole dark helmet scene in Spaceballs. That's how they figured it out. What has been your favorite cosplay that you've seen today? Just narrowing it down to today as opposed to of all time. That's a tougher question.
I saw some guys wearing like extremely big like mech warrior kind of things, big padded stuff, like 8 feet tall, going down the sidewalk. Then they obviously couldn't see where they were going, and there's of course the big crowds, and they were just sort of like staggering around, like smashing, like they were drunk fighting robots, and they were just trying to get down the street.
It's like I don't know. We need a reenactment of this. Like, basically, every time that we're outside, we were walking around outside, and we're like dying from the sweat, and we see this guy walking around in the big Chewbacca cosplay, and I'm like,
oh no,
how are you doing that?
And I know some of the 501st, like the Darth Vader guys, and we were at a convention in Phoenix, and it was 110 degrees out, and he's in the full Vader outfit, and he would like go into the back room, and he'd take off the helmet, and it was like he would pour a teacup full of sweat out of it, and a lot of them actually have built-in fans inside their suits and
that's
stuff.
a good thing to have.
But I think that my little black jacket here is miserable in the heat. So the paternal advice I can give is cosplayers, think about your costume in Atlanta before you build one.
Right.
I did actually.
If you could say one thing as a roast to Tim Zahn, what would it be?
Roast to Tim Zahn. I'm not going to do that. He's a friend of mine. See the fans.
This is actually our second time actually interviewing Tim. Tim is where I started with, and that's actually a really good place to start with. No, I did read Splinter of the Mind's Eye, but I didn't really get into it.
If I understand the story of Splinter of the Mind's Eye right, that George Lucas, they did Star Wars, and don't take me. I mean, this is what I've understood. That he wrote Empire Strikes Back, which would be the quote-unquote big-budget sequel if the movie was successful, or he wrote a much smaller adventure sequel, Splinter of the Mind's Eye, that he could have done as like a cheap TV movie if Star Wars didn't take off.
Right.
So since it took off, they didn't need to do the cheap TV one.
And so
I
they
don't
did
know
it.
if that's correct or not. That's what
But
I've heard.
I got back into it because of Tim Zahn, and one of the things that really drew me to it was, they had Grand Admiral Thrawn, who was finally a villain that wasn't like a Force user, wasn't like.
Just a smart guy with a lot of big ships.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good way to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh wait, that's a Tim Zahn question.
Was I answering Tim's questions?
No.
Oh, come on.
We had questions for both of you.
And I gave
we
him,
had
but I
yours.
gave Tim intelligent answers then.
I did intelligent answer for Tim.